Have you ever felt like walking in the dark, trying to find meaning in the silence of God? Those moments when everything seems standing, without direction, as if the sky were in plane mode? Come. This is not the end of the story, it is just the interval between what you lived and what God is preparing. It is common to fear what is not seen. The future, with its thick mist of uncertainties, often makes us anxious, insecure, and even frustrated. But here is a truth that changes everything. God has gone on. He is behind Ishina, taking care of every detail, working even when you do not notice. And what seems delay, in fact, is preparation. In this video, you will understand why the silence of Dios is not absence, but hidden movement. You will find out how the wait can become the most fertile terrain for your FE, and how the confianza in divine promises can turn cloudy days into esperanza journeys. If you are looking for clarity, comfort, and spiritual direction, you are in the right place. This video is not just something to hear, it is an invitation to see the invisible, strengthen your inner fortress, and live the spiritual cresciment that comes from the total surrender to God's sovereign. Get ready, because the way is traced. And whoever walks with faith is never alone. It is already subscribed to the channel, activates the notifications, and comes with me on this journey of faith, growth, and victory. Many people confuse the silence of Dios with abandonment. It seems that when prayers are not answered immediately, God hung up the phone, went to take care of another world, and left us in the hopeful mode. But it's not quite. His silence is not contempt, it is careful. He works behind Ishina, as a director who already knows the end of the film and adjusts behind the scenes while the actors have not even noticed. The absence of sound is not the absence of presence. Do you know that feeling of praying and listening only to the echo of your own thoughts? That's where the test lives. Because when everything seems quiet, God is more active than ever. He watches us, listens to us, prepares us. Silence is a way for Him to tell us, trust me. It is in this apparent void that our faith starts to be forged, not in the noise of miracles, but in the stillness of waiting. The true confidence is not born when everything is working. It is born when you are in the dark, unanswered, and yet chooses to believe that God is acting. His silence reveals how much you know the heart of Him. Anyone who has experienced God's presence in the midst of silence knows there is an inexplicable comfort that only the Holy Spirit can offer at these times. Instead of asking, "Why is God silent?" try asking, "What is He wanting to show me in this silence?" This change of perspective can turn your incertidumber into peace. God is not absent, He collects Himself to watch you grow. Sometimes what He is doing is so great that He needs to be built in the invisible, away from His hurry eyes. If it was all obvious, we wouldn't need esperanza. And without hope, faith would be an empty concept. The silence of Dios trains us for spiritual formation. He invites us to look inside, recognize our dependencies, strengthen our minds, and purify intentions. Because only what is solid survives the absence of visible applause and confirmations. There are days when we wake up feeling like God had taken a vacation from our case. But He's not like us. The loyalty of Him does not oscillate over time or with our mood. He continues in charge, even when we run out of return. These days, repeat to you, God is here, even though I don't see. He has gone on, even if I don't understand. Have you noticed how, after a long silence, something surprising happens? It seems that God was keeping the best for the right time. It is like a play that only reveals the protagonist at the climax. Victoria is often born of silence that seemed punishment, but it was just divine strategy. Believe me, God knows exactly what He is doing. And if today you are going through this moment of silence, take a deep breath. It is not the end, it is the interval. It's not punishment, it's careful. It is not abandonment, it is preparation. It is closer than you think. No need to see to know faith. Is it walking in the dark, trusting that God's hand is guiding every step, even in silence? Have you ever stopped to think that God's silence can be a laboratory? It is there, without audience, without spotlight, that He begins the refinement process. Like golden fire, our faith is placed at high temperatures, not to destroy us, but to remove impurities. God knows that some victories can only be held by mature hands, and this requires formation. Nothing is for nothing when He is in charge. This time of preparation does not usually come with warnings. It comes subtle, often in the midst of routine, delays, the know that we don't understand. The truth is that as we ask for open doors, God is strengthening us to cross those that will come. Because it is no use winning what the heart is not yet ready to support. He takes care of the structure before the blessing arrives. Do you know that feeling of being still, while everyone seems to advance? Make no mistake, you are not late, you are being shaped. God specializes in working behind Ashina, cutting details that do not yet make sense. This time is too precious to rush. When Victoria arrives, you will understand that each day of silence had purpose. It is common to want to skip the process. We want the blessing, but don't want the backstage. But the backstage is where the soul grows, where the faith strengthens, where the inner fortress is built. God doesn't just want to bring you to destination, He wants you to be ready to live in it wisely. Therefore, do not fight the process. Embrace the formation. Some of the greatest spiritual leaders have gone through anonymity, doubts, and waiting years. Moses spent 40 years in the desert before leading. David was anointed king and took care of sheep again. Joseph was betrayed and arrested before governing Egypt. God used the waiting time to prepare them. And with you, it will be no different. He honors those who respect the timino of Dios. In these periods of preparation, take care of your interior. Feed the Word, practice the silence, write a diary of prayers. Listen to messages that strengthen your faith. It is not lost time, it is spiritual creepy. The earth must be fertile before the seed flourish. And you are this soil being careful with love. Maybe no one see what you are living, and that's fine. What God is doing in you is more valuable than any external recognition. At the right time, He will put you where you should be. Meanwhile, embrace the invisible. Dia's silence is the sign that He is more interested in his growth than in his immediate comfort. So if heaven seems silent at his restless soul, remember, God is not taking, He is refining. And what is refined becomes rare, strong, and lasting. You are not being ignored, you are being carved. And when the work is ready, everyone will see what God has seen from the beginning, someone ready to live the purpose with maturity and power. Having faith when everything goes well is easy. It is difficult to keep confidence when we pray and nothing happens. It is at this exact point that true faith begins to take shape. When the silence of Dios invades our prayers and the answers seem to be in nap mode, we are challenged to continue believing. It is like walking with blindfolded eyes, trusting that God is guiding every step. This is where faith is no longer theory and becomes practical. The faith that resists silence is the one that generates deep roots. She does not move in visible signs, but by the confidence in God's character. The absence of answers does not mean absence of plan. Sometimes silence is just the sound that precedes a big turn. God uses this moment to teach us how to depend on it in a real, not emotional way. Faith without proof is faith without strength. Have you noticed how silence exposes our insecurities? When God is silent, our mind tries to fill the space with doubts, fears, and assumptions. But it is in this field of incertidumber that our faith becomes more authentic. That's when we have no more control that we understand that He always had. The secret is to continue walking even without visible guarantees. A practical exercise for these moments is to remember everything God has done for you. Write a list of the promises that were fulfilled, the doors that opened when you least expected. This helps to feed the esperanza and remember that if He was faithful before, He will remain. God's loyalty does not change with silence. She is constant, firm, safe. And do you know what is most curious? Many of our greatest spiritual transformations happen in the midst of silence. It is when the sky seems silent that the heart listens more. God teaches us, confronts us, and strengthens us in this secret place. This is where the most sincere prayers, the deepest requests, and the most striking meetings with their presence are born. The faith that survives silence becomes unshakable. It is like a muscle that strengthens with resistance. You may not hear anything today, but if you keep believing, you will realize that something inside you is changing. This is the power of spiritual crescimientation. It does not depend on the external, but what is being generated from within, in the rhythm of the Tempus of Dios. If it is difficult to trust, remember Jesus in Gethsemane. Even He faced silence, anguish, and a sense of abandonment. But it remained firm. Silence was also part of your journey. And if He won, we can. He understands us, accompanies us, and strengthens us. Even when everything seems stopped, Victoria has already begun to be built. So don't give up just because God hasn't responded yet. Sometimes His silence is exactly what His faith needs to grow. And a strengthened faith in the invisible is the key to seeing the impossible happen. Stay firm, even without noise, because it is in silence that faith screams louder in the sky. Waiting is not natural for most of us. We live in a world where everything is instant food, messages, shopping. But with God, time is different. The tiempo of Dios has its own pace, and learning to walk with it requires patience, confidence, and especially surrender. The wait is not a punishment, it is a school. And in it, we learn what only silence and time can teach. You may find it ready, but God sees what still needs to be adjusted. Preparation involves deep layers of our heart that only time reveals. He does not delay blessings, He aligns purposes. And as we wait, we are transformed. It's like planting a seed. It is no use screaming with the earth. There is an exact time to germinate and flourish. At these times, it is common to hit the incertidumber. Will it happen? Did God forget me? But God's time never misses. He sees the end from the beginning and is not limited by our anxiety. The Effie you expect is one of the strongest, because she says, even without seeing, I trust. And this confidence moves invisible mountains. If you are waiting for something, an answer, a cure, an open door, understand the way you expect also part of the process. Waiting muttering is not the same as waiting with esperanza. Use this time to prepare, pray, strengthen your mind, listen more to the voice of God. A good resource for this? Listen again to this video as many times as necessary. God's loyalty does not fail, even when the wait seems too long. He does not forget the promises He made. Every second of silence is a second of preparation. You may not even see what is happening, but God is moving backstage pieces behind Ashina, as always. Trust the process, even if it seems slow. Do you know that phrase, God delay, but don't fail? It may sound cliché, but it carries a powerful truth. Him's time does not follow our clock, but always comes at the right time. If it is taking too long, it is because it is capricious. What comes from God comes with purpose, with glory. Wait, with lasting Victoria. Do not accept shortcuts. The right destination requires the right route. The wait also protects you. Sometimes God holds something because He knows that if He came now, He could hurt you. He sees what you don't see. He knows what you don't know yet. And in this sovereignty, He keeps you, even if you think it's being forgotten. The wait is an expression of His love, although at the time it seems the opposite. So if time is extending more than you would like, stay firm. God is not just taking you to a place, He is preparing you to live in that place with maturity and wisdom. Wait with faith. Wait with confidence. Because when it promises to be fulfilled, you will realize that it was worth every second of waiting. Confidence in God's promises is what sustains our journey when everything around says the opposite. Sometimes it seems that everything is crumbling, but it is enough for a word of Him to keep our hearts standing. God does not throw words into the wind. What He promises, He fulfills. The question is, are you willing to trust, even when everything says no? The faith true does not depend on circumstances, but on the character of the promised. There are times when all we have is a promise. And do you know what more? This is more than enough. Because God's loyalty is unbreakable. When He says He will do it, He does in His time, the way He, to His glory. Our part is to hold on, even if the evidence say otherwise. He does not forget, does not delay, does not change His mind. The confidence is born of intimacy. The more you know God, the more you believe in your words. Promises are seeds. Some germinate fast, some need more time, more silence, more refinished. But they all have a certain destination: fruiting. Meanwhile, don't doubt it. Feed your faith with the Word. A good resource. Listen to videos like this one again to rekindle what has already been said to your heart. Have you noticed how the enemy tries to make you doubt just what God has promised? Because he knows that if you keep believing, Victoria is inevitable. Therefore, protect your faith as a treasure. Remember the promises, declare aloud, write in the mirror, paste it in the notebook. Make the truth of God the shield against every incertidumber. God is not impressed by our haste. He works accurately. Each promise goes through a cycle: announcement, waiting, and fulfillment. And among these stages, our formation happens. He uses the wait to teach us to trust, and the silence to deepen faith. Those who trust the promise do not need proof, just need to remember who promised. There are promises that seem asleep, as if they had been forgotten in the sky. But make no mistake, God do not forget. It is only adjusting the pieces. While you pray, He moves the heavens. While you wait, it transforms your soul. When the time comes, everything will make sense. Until then, keep Esperanza alive and trust Him in the perfect time. Remember, it is not about deserving, it is about believing. God does not fulfill promises based on our performance, but based on His loyalty. He knows how, when, and where to fulfill each word. Your part is to trust. If God gave you a promise, grab it with all your soul. And if He is hesitant, He remembers again the author of the promise is also her consummate. Promise is a divine commitment to your future. And if God Himself has guaranteed, who can prevent? Nothing or anyone. Neither time, no mistakes nor silences. He will fulfill. Until then, may your faith be your rest, your prayer be your fuel, and your trust be your anchor amid waiting. Perhaps the hardest part of the journey with God is to trust when we see nothing happening. The nothing we see is not inactivity, it is only invisible to our eyes. God is a master of operating behind Ishina, where we do not see, where we do not control. And it is in this silent space that the greatest works are done. Like the roots of a tree, the essential is always underground. Have you ever set up a 1,000-piece puzzle? At first it seems impossible, but gradually the pieces connect. Such is God's act. He takes what seems confused and organizes perfectly. Even if everything seems out of place today, trust He's aligning every detail. And when the image begins to reveal itself, you will understand the value of every second of waiting. Silence is often the cover of the miracle. God is acting even when we do not feel. This requires faith, requires confidence, requires a daily surrender. He is working on areas that you didn't even know they needed healing. He is protecting from things you didn't even imagine would be a danger. He is opening ways that are still covered by His own eyes. Have you ever thought that some doors you wanted to open were actually deliverances? That delay was protection? That missed opportunity was just the push for something bigger? So it is. God's work is full of strategy. Nothing escapes your sovereign. What looks like chaos today, tomorrow will be testimony. Trust this invisible process. This hidden work of God is also an invitation to surrender. He is saying, "Son, you don't have to understand everything, you just have to trust." It sounds simple, but it's deep. This is where the spiritual fortress forms. You exchange control for rest, anxiety for faith. And in this place of surrender, a peace is born that does not depend on the circumstances. Many miracles happen behind the scenes. When you least expect it, what seemed immovable begins to move. Because while you sleep, pray, or cry, God is acting. He does not rest, does not distract Himself, does not delay. He is totally committed to His good. And that, by itself, is already a reason to keep Esperanza alive. If you feel you are stagnant, take a deep breath. You are not stopped, you are being positioned. Not in sight, but at the center of God's will. The deepest spiritual creepy is born in these silent places. This is where you learn to listen with your heart, to believe with your eyes closed, to walk through faith and not by sight. Do not despair of what you do not see. God is taking care of the details perfectly. What is hidden today will be revealed with glory tomorrow. Meanwhile, rest in the fact that He is working. And remember, if He's behind the scenes, it's because He's preparing a show. And when the stage opens, Victoria will be inevitable. The incertidumber scares. When we have no answers, our mind runs to the worst scenario. But it is exactly on this soil of doubts that faith finds space to flourish. Dia's silence may seem uncomfortable, but he is fertile. It is in it that the confianza is tested and the spiritual crecimiento happens. Because when you learn to walk without guarantees, you learn to really trust. Most of us want to be sure before taking the next step. But God, in His sovereign, does not always reveal the full way. Sometimes it shows only the next step. It is in this space between the not yet and the has been promised that we are transformed. And if you are there now, know this is a holy place. God is working on you, even if you still don't understand how. Amid uncertainty, two options appear: paralyze or proceed. And it is in this choice that faith shows its strength. Faith is not absence of fear, it is a decision. It is to say, I will continue, even without seeing what comes next. This is spiritual maturity. This is fortress. It is not about having everything under control, but about resting on those who have all control: God. A good exercise these days is to ask yourself, what is this uncertainty trying to teach me? Perhaps she is revealing the need to drop the control. Or maybe it's teaching you to trust instead of understanding. Try to listen to videos like this at times like this. They help to remember that we are not alone on this journey. God's presence does not depend on His perception. He is there, even when everything seems empty. And the more you cling to it, the stronger it becomes. Silence is not a sign of abandonment, it is a sign of training. It is like the Academy of Soul. Each day of uncertainty is a day of invisible strengthening. You don't come out the same way it came in. Many of our greatest jumps of faith are born when we have no guarantee that it will work. But have you seen God fail? He always appears, always honor, always fulfill. His loyalty is what sustains when reason fails. Trust it. Hold on this truth as if it were your security rope. Why it is. The growth that comes from uncertainty is not superficial. He is deep, real, transformative. He teaches you to see with the eyes of faith, to listen with your heart, to wait with hope. The wait is not passive, it is full of purpose. And if God is making you wait, it is because something grand is being formed behind Ashina. When the doubt comes to knock on your door, receive it with faith. Show that your trust is not in the circumstances, but in promises. Remember, uncertainty is just a temporary scenario. God is eternal. And in the end, when everything fits, you will look back and realize that each uncertain step was actually led by firm and faithful hands. And now that you have traveled every part of this journey from silence to faith, from waiting to victory, stop a moment and reflect. How are you going to answer what you heard? Will you keep complaining about waiting or start seeing it as part of your preparation? Will you escape silence or decide to listen more carefully to what God is teaching you at this time? True faith is not passive. She acts, even without seeing. She trusts, even in the midst of her incertidumbre. So how about starting to apply what you heard today? Take a moment of your day to pray with intention. Write what God has given to your heart. Thank you for promises not yet fulfilled. Because gratitude before the miracle is an act of faith. Do you believe that God has gone on and has prepared the way? If so, why do you still fear the future? How about leaving this anxiety in the hands of the one who knows you better than yourself? Your spiritual creepy begins when you change your hurry for confianza, and the doubt for the certainty that He is behind Ashina, acting in His favor. What God is doing on you is now greater than you think. And when the right time comes, you will understand the value of each tear, every silence, every wait. Victoria will arrive not as an end, but as the beginning of a new phase. Until then, continue, one step at a time, with faith, firmly and with fixed eyes on those who never fail. Now, tell me what has touched you most in this video. Which of these points do you need to practice today? Are you willing to trust, even without seeing? If this content spoke to you, share with someone who is going through a time of silence. And of course, you subscribe to the channel, activate the notifications, and stay around. There is still a lot of good things out there and you won't want to be left out.